Hi, this is Mohammed Hussein with the CourseTech Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair. This is a regular body. If you look down right now, you might see a regular body. This is a regulatory body. It's a bunch of sciencey people sitting around and making decisions on your projects. This is the kind of body we'll be talking about today. We are going to discuss regulatory bodies such as the Scientific Review Committee, or SRC, and the Institutional Review Board, or IRB, and when you might need approval from either of these regulatory bodies before beginning your experiment. We, the DMR-SEF, follow rules set by the International Science and Engineering Fair, or ISEF, and we understand that pre-approval can be a little confusing. But hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll understand what regulatory bodies your regular body will need to talk to before beginning your experiment. Let's start by talking about projects that don't need any type of pre-approval. If your project sounds like it falls into this group, you're good to go. Pay attention to this list of questions, and if you answer yes to any of these, you'll want to stick around for the rest of the video. Does your project involve mold or other fungus, bacteria, or viruses? Basically anything that might make you sick. Or does your project involve cultured samples collected from the environment, or any other kind of microorganisms? Does your project involve DNA from one organism being inserted into the DNA from another organism? Does your project involve anything coming from a human or animal body, which could include cells, teeth, bones, fluids, or does your project involve any kind of tissues? Are you experimenting on yourself? Does your project involve experimentation on humans in any way? Does your project involve your pet? And other than people, does your project involve any kind of animals that have bones? If you answered no to all of these questions, you don't need pre-approval to get your experiment started. However, your project is always reviewed by the regional SRC after you submit your paperwork to the science fair. You just don't need pre-approval to get started on your experiment, if your experiment falls into this no pre-approval needed category. So you can get started on your experiment right now. Stick around until the end of the video to learn about the regional SRC review process. There's also a timestamp in the description of this video that'll skip to the regional SRC portion of the video. So now, let's talk about projects that do need pre-approval. The most common regulatory body for pre-approval is your local SRC. The SRC is a group of professional scientists, educators, and administrators who are trained to evaluate the safety of your project and to make sure that it adheres to the rules laid out by ISEF. Pay attention to the following list of questions. This list of questions is going to cover potentially hazardous biological agents. We already went over this earlier in the video, but I'll go over it again real quick right now. Does your project involve mold or fungus? Or does it involve bacteria, viruses, or anything that could potentially make you sick? Or does your project involve cultured samples collected from the environment? Or does your project involve any kind of microorganism? Does your project involve DNA from one organism being inserted into the DNA of another organism, also referred to as rDNA? Or does your project involve anything coming from a human or animal body? This can include any kind of cell, teeth, bones, fluids, or tissues. If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may not begin working on the experimental portion of your project until your local SRC has approved your procedures. You will need to reach out to your local SRC, which will most likely be a group at your school or regulated research institution. If you don't know how to contact your local SRC, or possibly don't even have a local SRC, email us at denversciencefair@ucdenver.edu and we'll help you get in contact with the correct local SRC. If your project involves human subjects, even if you're doing something simple like asking them some questions, or if your project involves vertebrate animals, please keep watching, and if not, you're all set. Another regulatory body you may need to work with is the IRB, which is a specific regulatory body overseeing research involving human participants. If your project involves human participants, even if you're just testing on yourself, it is considered high risk enough to need pre-approval from the start, as humans have special protections in the research world. I went over this list of questions earlier, but I'll repeat it again now. Does your project involve asking other people questions? Are you experimenting on yourself? Or are you experimenting with other people in any way? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you will need to reach out to your local IRB. This will be at your school or regulated research institution. The mentor or qualified scientists you are working with should be able to help you identify the right IRB. But again, if you don't know where to look, or know you don't have access to a local IRB, contact the FAIR team as soon as possible. Email us at denversciencefair@ucdenver.edu and we'll get you connected to the correct local IRB. And don't forget that you will still likely need local SRC pre-approval for this project. If your project involves testing on or with vertebrate animals, please keep watching. And if not, you're all set. If your project involves vertebrate animals, you will likely need to work with another regulatory body known as the IACUC, which is like an IRB but for animal protections. Here are some questions to help you determine if you need to contact this body. I went over them before, but I'll go over them again quickly now. Does your project involve your pet or any other animals that have bones, besides people? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you will need to reach out to an IACUC board. This will likely be at your school or a regulated research institution. The mentor or qualified scientists you are working with should be able to help you identify the right IACUC. But again, if you don't know where to look or know you don't have access to one, contact the FAIR team as soon as possible. And don't forget that you still likely need local SRC pre-approval for this project. And that's all the pre-approval you might need. As long as you are within the rules, you are ready to go until you submit your project to the DMR SEF, where every project will start back at the beginning with a regional SRC review. Every project is reviewed by the regional SRC, who will review all submitted materials and work with you to correct and clarify anything that needs fixing. Nearly every project goes through multiple rounds of review by the regional SRC, so don't worry, it's normal to receive multiple corrections. Just make sure to stay on top of communications with your regional SRC reviewer. Some projects may require an interview before being able to participate in the fair, if an understanding of safety procedures and/or documentation isn't met in time. Remember, this isn't a punishment, it's just an extra level of safety. And remember, the SRC can't stop you from breaking a rule during experimentation, so be careful to read through the rules. Some violations can result in your project failing to qualify for awards, which would be sad. If you are a student or an educator with any remaining questions, please email us at denversciencefair@ucdenver.edu. And to find other helpful resources for the science fair, visit our website at clas.ucdenver.edu/Denver Science Fair. Thanks for watching.